This episode is brought to you by JT Clothiers. Hi, I'm Chad Hennings, and welcome to Forces of Character podcast, where we have conversations about building a life of impact. My guest today, we've been friends for a long time. I mean, we go quite a ways back.
I mean, when I first got out, and we played in a flag football game and decided we were just going to lean against each other and make noises because we weren't going to go as hard as everybody else was because we've done this before.
That's exactly
you win
right.
this time, I win next time.
But this man sitting next to me, Naval Academy graduate, former Navy SEAL, entrepreneur, husband, father, again, fellow knuckle dragger too, but this guy as well as a philanthropist, and we're going to talk a little bit about that. But Clint, again, welcome to the show,
Thanks
my
for
friend.
having me. It's been fun to watch these shows and to watch you hear other people's stories, but learn more about yours because you have this habit of being more interested in other people, and so we got to try to get your story out, right? So,
hey, talking about that, I truly do see us as brothers from a different area, from a different mother, some people say, but from a different area. We've had several things in common. Both played Service Academy, both played on the right side of the ball, defense.
That's exactly right.
I was a D lineman, you're a linebacker, and we talked earlier before the show. You do remind me a lot of my former teammate Terry Mackey, All-American, combat controller, had a great storied career there.
He's one of the first Service Academy grads with a special operations background beyond, obviously SF coming out of West Point and the SEAL teams, Alton Grizzard, who I think you played against, and obviously Admiral I can't believe it. Concussions, brother. Concussions.
Are doing those halo jumps, but again, we're both knuckle draggers.
Yeah.
On active duty, I think we had, in my branch of military service, the coolest jobs that were out there. I flew God's gift to close air support.
And we would agree with that. Like
the Fairchild Republic.
Yeah, the only people who love the A-10 more than you is us.
Yeah, the guys on the ground. And you as a Navy SEAL, SEAL Team 5.
Yeah.
You're a husband, you're a father, entrepreneur. Mm-hmm. But I think I got one up on you in one thing.
Well, I mean, you have a Super Bowl ring.
No. The more important things. Did you ever beat an Air Force football team?
Yeah, I'm 2-2.
You did?
Yeah, but that's why Bo Morgan and I can coexist because we're 2-2.
Okay.
Yeah.
I hurt
more of your guys than I got hurt by your guys. So it's a tie plus. We're 2-2.
Well, I never lost.
I wouldn't have agreed to come on this if I was disadvantaged. Because I didn't know that was going to happen. I can't handle it very well. No, we're 2-2. 2-2.
But that was, great battles. I mean, we'll talk a little bit about, and that's what we kind of laugh and tongue-in-cheek about, that inter-service rivalries.
Buddy, I remember first time I played up in Colorado Springs, 18 years old, you don't think that much, and I was like, altitude, whatever. That first series, I was like, this is bad. Like now I understand why the O2 tanks and all this other stuff. Well, this is a distinct home field advantage right here.
Yeah.
And y'all were so happy.
I think they painted the locker room pink now too. The opposing teams, like the University of Iowa does the Hawkeyes.
That's kind of funny.
I just want to mention, you had a great quote, inter-service rivalries, but you had a great quote, I think your senior year at the Hula Bowl, that they ask you, why this game differs.
About the Service
meaning
Academy.
Of the game.
Well, the Service Academy games, and it was an ESPN producer, and I can't remember when it was. It was like 2005, 2006, something like that. And they asked me about these rivalries, right? And I said, "What do you think?" Because it felt like a loaded question to me. And they listed, Army, OU, Michigan, Texas. I said, "Listen, I love those games. Those are great games, but Service Academy rivals stand apart." And they go, "What do you mean?" I said, "You show me another game where everybody playing is willing to die for everybody watching, and I'll tell you that we have company." And they just. What do you say? There's like, and it was really cool how it meant something to them, like beyond just kind of, locking them up a little bit. You could see it kind of wash over them a little bit, and you could see them kind of look at our games in a way that they never looked at it before. But that is the way we feel. I mean, like that's I think all the metaphors that you play football for. We got to live those, and hearing you tell a story about you and Terry, during Mackey during Desert Storm, like we always say, like, hey, when they say play like your buddy's life depends on it, like in our world, that's accurate. Like 2-3 years, it might.
As MacArthur's quote, on the fields of friendly strife, right?
So we're fortunate, man. We're blessed, and I don't know about you, but a lot of the friends I have that played, D1 and played, in the league after that. My little brother played at Oklahoma State, and a lot of them are pretty envious about the relationships we have with our brotherhood. The teammates you had, the teammates I had, the teammates like Ryan and Makeda, those guys have. And I think as we get older, we realize how unique our collegiate playing experiences, the relationships we have. They're just different. They're different. And in the days of NIL now, I think the brotherhood that we all enjoy is even more unique and even more special.
Yeah. Hopefully it's not a thing of the past. But let's dive a little bit deeper into your background.
Sure.
Tell us a little bit about, growing up, where'd you grow up, some of your influences, such as life. Who gave you that edge?
Yeah, no, I grew up in Arkansas.
Explains everything, man.
It does. A lot of tumblers fall into place. I have a lot of friends that are PCS and from like East Coast to West Coast or West Coast to East Coast. And they'll drive through Arkansas and they'll call me like, you make a lot more sense than that. I'm like, where'd you stop? But I love being a kid from Arkansas, and had a great mom, great dad, older sister, younger brother. Moved down here when I was in middle school. We jokingly say if you're going to come from Arkansas to Dallas, Garland's a good way to do that. You feel like you're still in Arkansas, you're just closer to Six Flags and Wet n Wild. And I love my hometown, man. I'm a Garland kid. I'm proud of it. But I always tell people, like, TV show King of the Hill is based on Garland. So like, Bobby? And so went to a great school. I had incredible coaches. I love football way sooner than football loved me. And it's funny, your experience, we started talking about, how much you weighed when you were a freshman in high school, and people have these assumptions about our entire football career was like it ended up, and that's really not the case. I was the 5th string fullback in 8th grade at Vandenberg Middle School, and there were only 3 of the fullbacks. So like, and my dad was like, son, I'm not upset that you're the 5th string fullback. I'm upset they put it in the program. I'm like, what? Like, they wrote up in the program, like 1, 2, 3, blank, 5. And so I think for me, I tell people my gift is not being gifted because I got to figure it out, right? And at some point in time, the mountain makes all men and women average if you're aiming high enough. And if all you have is your advantages, you're not going to make it. But if you couple those advantages with angles and allies, you got a chance. And I think for me, loving football before football loved me gave me a chance to kind of build those muscles that the rest of life really demanded, And I tell these younger guys that aren't starting, I'm like, hey man, be grateful because the supply chain of excellence is repetitions. And as a scout team player, which I was for like 8th grade, 9th grade, most of 10th grade, like you get 3 or 4 reps for every 1 rep the starters are getting. So you don't know it, but you're massing talent. And I don't know how y'all did it, but you play every position as a scout team. Like you're this, and I remember the first game I ever played really significant playing time was halfway through my junior season. Guy got hurt, another guy got kicked off the team, and we were up. And my position coach would tell me, he's like, I wouldn't even make eye contact with the head coach when I put Clint in. So I thought I was going to get in trouble, which I don't like it when he tells that story. And I remember watching the guard. I'm like, man, when I play guard on scout team, I sit back on my heels a little bit. If I'm going to pull, I bet he's going to pull. So shot the gap, and also the tumblers fell into place. And so I think I'm very serious when I say my gift is not being gifted, because I've had to figure out things. And then once you couple kind of gifting and ability and it catches up with figuring out the system, it can be pretty special. Yeah. So I love not being good until the end of my career. I think it built something that really served me the rest of my life. Like, the SEAL teams, nothing's ever been easy, and I'm grateful for that. And so when something's hard, I'm just used to it.
So you talk about your coaches, your dad.
Yeah, and in my senior year, my father passed away my senior year in high school, and I think that's kind of when I had to start making different decisions about where I was going to go and play. And you and I have talked about kind of your path to the Air Force Academy and how it was kind of unique and maybe not what a lot of people think it was, right? And for me, I was fortunate. I was playing a big 5A school here, had great coaches that advocated for you at the next level. And my father passed away just a few miles up the road over there in Medical City. And when he went in the hospital, he was my size. And when he passed away, I could kind of carry him in one arm. It was just really, he was decimated by it. But you had to step back and acknowledge it because his personality and his faith was so robust. Like you had to step back and realize he declined because he just didn't radiate that. And I remember going up to talk to him. We were talking about the schools I was getting called by and stuff. And I remember he goes, son, you have to make a 40-year decision, not a 4-year decision about what to do next. And he goes, because I don't know how this is going to end up. And I just didn't want to hear that.
Yeah.
I was one of these kind of power, positive thinking guys. And I'll never forget it. If you read Beowulf, there's a moment in the story where the point of view switches to Grendel, vice Beowulf. And it's the point of view where he's attacking the great house, and Beowulf grabs him. And it switched to Grendel's perspective, and Grendel's like, I've never felt anything like this before. And I remember I was pushing back on my dad because I didn't want to talk about what happened if it didn't work out. And he grabbed my wrist. And when he grabbed my wrist, I realized how much power he still had. It was just a real meaningful moment. And he looked at me and goes, son, leaders talk about what they don't want to talk about. They say what they don't want to say. They plan for what they don't want to happen, and they listen to what they want to listen to. And the willingness to do it is what makes them a leader. And for me, that was really foundational. And I'd watched him live that, you know, and the men I aspired to be like, and the men he was intentional about having me around, they kind of lived like that. So, you know, one of the questions I get asked a lot is like, what did you learn going through SEAL training? And my answer is, it catches people off guard. So I go, nothing. They go, what do you mean? I'm like, well, of course I learned the mechanics of being a SEAL, but I didn't learn anything. What I learned going through SEAL training is who was telling me the truth my whole life. Because that's, you don't learn through, you figure out who was telling you the truth and who was lying to you. Like, it's a proving ground, not a learning ground when you go through this thing. So I was extremely advantaged in the men and women that I found myself around before losing my dad, then after losing my father, certainly at the academy, at the coaches I had. And,
So why the academy versus other schools?
well, you know, I jokingly say this, but it's really kind of not a joke. One of the questions I get asked all the time is like, hey, when did you want to be a Navy SEAL? And I just could not remember not wanting to be one. I couldn't point to a particular origin story, but I don't remember not wanting to be one. And then,
I mean, this is even before the academy?
That's one of the reasons, that's the reason I went to the Naval Academy is to
be a SEAL.
Yeah, the coach told me, he's like, yeah, you just tell him you want to be a SEAL, which is not true. Like, he's a liar. Like, it's way harder than that. And I was like, yeah, you just tell me to be a SEAL, and he's, no. But I figured it out during COVID. And, you know, there's nothing really redemptive or positive about COVID other than, like you, I got to spend a tremendous amount of time with my kids, right? And my oldest daughter, I remember she came to me, she goes, Dad, you want to watch Magnum PI? I'm like, 100% I want to watch Magnum PI Thursday nights at 8 p.m., right? And she put on the new one. I was like, stop, we're not watching that. Like, you don't remake certain things. So I took her back to the original Magnum PI. And so, which is actually a really progressive show, man. It actually talks about PTSD and depression and you know, the harmony that we enjoy on the battlefield, on the ball field, you know, with TC and Magnum and Rick. But there's a moment in the second season where they reveal that the character Thomas Magnum played football at the Naval Academy and he was a Navy SEAL. And all of a sudden, I remember sitting with my dad Thursday nights, 8 p.m., Little Rock, Arkansas, and just looking at my dad, like, Dad, I'm going to play football at the Naval Academy and be a Navy SEAL. My dad was like, all right. And I think that's where the whole thing started. I think the whole thing started is
So Tom
I
Selleck,
wanted to be like Magnum, man.
Selleck.
Yeah, you could do worse. And the worst thing about that whole story is we were watching it, and my middle daughter said, Dad, when did you look like that? And my bride was across the house. I have no idea how she heard it, but all I heard from the far corners of our home was like, your father's never looked like that. I was like, that's just hurt. I mean, it's true, but you don't yell it like that. Like, your father's never looked like that. I'm like, all right.
Wives have radars, man, I tell you.
100%. So yeah, service academies, one is the oldest son. My position was to take care of my mom, my sister, my brother, and provision for them in a way that my dad would have been proud of. And then two, I think I needed the Naval Academy. I mean, I think I was a big, strong, angry guy that could have gotten in a lot of trouble. And I think the structure and discipline that you have the Service Academy saved me. I mean, it was right after Desert Storm. I mean, you know, you had, and all I know is I'm getting yelled at. I'll never forget it. Jimmy Gallaudet. He was in Panama. He was one of the SEALs in Panama, and he'd gone to the Naval Academy. And here I'm this big, strong, tough guy who likes to fight, and this lean, wiry guy's got his finger in my chest, telling me he's going to hurt me, and I'm like, I believe him. Like, let's slow down. Apparently, there's been a miscommunication here. Like, let me start with, I'm sorry for whatever it was. Let's begin. But I needed that. I needed that structure. And I think just God navigated me into an environment, and he always has been very generous and very careful for me, and navigated me in environments where I'm surrounded by people who hold a high standard and hold me to it as well.
That's awesome.
Yeah.
You know, after wanting to be a Naval SEAL, but then you also had a stint there. You tried to play ball for a period of time, going through a couple of training camps. You know, what ultimately made that decision for you to go to Buds?
Well, one, I don't think I was as good as you, and then two, I had a guy in front of me at Baltimore named Ray Lewis, who was pretty good. I remember being at practice one day, just going, man, it might be easier to become a Navy SEAL than to beat out Ray Lewis, and it was. So I did. So you know, and I wanted to serve, man. God, you know, he does whatever he wants to and however he wants to. One of the things I've noticed is that God sometimes gives us exactly what we want, so we can figure out what it really is, right? And all my life, I wanted to play in the NFL. I want to be a Navy SEAL, and here I am, kind of experiencing both. And for me, it became really clear which one mattered most to me. And what I realized is everything I loved about football was 10x in the special operations community. I mean, you know, I think the way you feel about the ready room and the locker room, like you love the ready locker room. You got a great locker room, but it's different when, you know, the ready room is different. And so I think I crave that. I love the intangibles. I love the brotherhood. I love the camaraderie. I love the hardness of it, that you had to work hard every day. And so for me, it was pretty easy to leave.
You know, you mentioned that, the commonality. I had noticed that too in my career with being in a fighter squadron. It was very similar to being in a locker room.
Yeah.
And as far as mission prep too, for a game, as well as, you know, preparing either for a training or a combat mission, you know, flying, you know, mission, you know, brief, execute, debrief, that sort of model. Talk to a little bit more in depth about your experiences in the ready room with SEALs and versus, you know, in the locker room, just aside from the camaraderie piece.
I mean, I think, you know, at that strata, no one's successful without intense preparation. Like, no one's good enough to just show up and be better than everybody else. Like, in the elite kind of special operations community, no one's talented enough to just show up and stay there. And in an NFL, no one's just talented enough to show up and be better than everybody else. And so you better know how to prepare, learn how to prepare really quickly. And the best organizations are going to hold you accountable to that. And one thing is, when I work with NFL guys all the time, it's like, hey, talent's real. Talent will get you here, but it won't keep you here. And that's why a lot of talent, I mean, at the end of the day, really the combine is a media event, because the combine consistently fails to show us who's going to have great careers, because there's something beyond that. And I'm not negating athletic talent. I'm just saying there's got to be something more than that, or some of these combine freaks would have had better careers, right?
That's what they talk about. Look like Tarzan, played like Jane.
Look like Tarzan, played like Jane, right? Because it all comes down to what happens on the field, right? And so it's the 6 inches between your ears and the size of your heart that matter at least as much, if not more, than your vertical and your 40. And I think I've always wanted to try to keep up with people I don't know if I can keep up with. And I've always wanted to prove myself against things I don't. That's why one of the reasons it was easy to leave the NFL is what I knew about, whatever I learned in football was going to be more what I already knew about myself. And I had no idea if I could make it through SEAL training. I had no idea if I could keep up with those kinds of men. And I just got to go where I don't know, because that's where I'm gonna need God most. Like, you know, if something requires less faith, run from it. And I'm going to go to the things that scare me, because that's where I'm going to need God most and learn the most.
You know, kind of back up, you know, preparation experience going through an NFL training camp was one type of training, but going through Bud's, whole different skill set, whole different type of physicality.
Yeah, it's triathlete training.
Yeah, well, but that's, I mean, as a big guy.
Yeah, I was the world's biggest triathlete for about 6 months.
How much time did you have when you left to when you went in?
None. I walked away from the league, and like 30 days later, I was checking into Bud's. And
was that just? I mean, was it a total?
Listen, if ignorance is bliss, I'm generally the happiest guy in the room. Like, I didn't know enough to know how unprepared I was, and by the time I was there, I was just like, but you're never prepared enough. That's what the machine is. The machine is built to beat you, because it wants to see what you do once you're past yourself.
I mean, we've had Chris Cassidy on, another Navy SEAL, and conversations with others.
Super underachiever. Yeah, real underachiever. That guy.
You know, astronaut, MIT.
Yeah. You know, head astronaut, chief astronaut. He was my task unit commander after 9/11. I worked with him. Yeah.
Good guy. Great guy. But to your point, like the NFL, like special operations, it's not necessarily, because he made a comment that he's looking around the first day of buds, who the big studs were. And it's not so much what's on the outside, it's mindset, that you're just
100%.
not gonna quit. You're gonna have to kill me before I quit.
That's why so when 8th grade I was so bad at football, I had to come up with this formula because I'm a process guy. And I remember I had a kind of demoralizing day at football, and the coach told me, he's like, hey, when you're in 8th grade, you can be on my team. I'm like, I'm in 8th grade. I've been on this team for a year and a half. Like, it's pretty hurtful, right? So I remember going home and just trying to encourage myself to stay with it. And I wrote down this kind of what I call the achievement equation, and it's really driven almost everything I've done. And for me, the achievement equation was angles plus allies plus advantages equals achievement. And sometimes I can't control advantages, but I can always control angles and allies. I can control mastery of my craft. I can reduce friction. I can take better angles, right? Like, I caught a lot of guys that were faster than me because I took the right angles, right? And I could surround myself with guys who meant what they said as much as I meant what I said, right? And so for me, when I look at the achievement equation, advantages are only 1/3 of the equation. But if I get angles and allies, I got 2/3. And so for me, I think the adversity is what taught me. And that's why I keep coming, SEAL training was a proving ground. You apply these things that have got you this far. And for me, I think there's an inflection point where talent begins to do. For me, I always look at talent. Talent's a credit line, right? And depending on what you're doing, you're going to exhaust that credit. And if the first time you exhaust that credit because you have such significant talent as in the NFL, you don't have the margin, right? Like, I remember when I was at the Ravens, there was a guy, it was the first time he wasn't the fastest guy in the room, and it kind of shattered him a little bit. And there was some coaches that were kind of messing with him about it, and I got mad. And I said, hey, when did you figure out you weren't the fastest guy in the room? Like 5th grade, 6th grade, 8th grade? You went home to 3 hots and a cot, and you had infrastructure, you had margin to recover from that. He's placed the burden of extracting his family from poverty based on his speed. So it's not a character issue, it's an exposure issue. What's the first hardest day of your life better not be when you do the hardest thing you've ever done, because there's some physiology to endurance that really matters.
Yeah.
And so for me, I think we ought to be doing things that are bigger than our talent, because it's going to build that account that we're going to have to draw on when we exhaust our talent.
That it reminds me so much, just a couple things from your story. As a young man, knowing that aspect, the importance of self-talk, self-positive affirmations.
I had to be my own fan because none of my coaches were.
Well, no,
like,
but I mean, for you intuitively that you knew
so.
that? Was that a God thing, or was that you intuitively? Because that's one thing that, particularly a lot of young men, they have this negative self-worth aspect. I'm a loser, I can't do this. But so easy to flip that. When you go through that adversity, having that mindset, and let alone I think we got into this with Chris too, with the mindset regarding Querrell Dweck, fixed mindset, growth mindset. I may not be the best, but I'm going to give it my best. I'm going to angles and allies.
For me, it's a discipline.
Improve.
It's a discipline. I mean, I've come to grips with the fact. I said this to a football team last year. I said, at the end of the day, I would never let anybody talk to me the way I talk to me. So why should I let me talk to me the way I talk to me? And I've always taught my daughters, like, hey, it's okay to be your own fan, just don't be your own God. Somewhere between being your own fan and being your own God, like, you got to start short of that, but it's okay to be your own fan, and even in just deference to your creator. Because if you think about this, if you have a faith that you and I share, when you're talking about your Ford F-150, you're talking about Ford. And so out of respect for your creator and your author, you can't bash yourself, right? And I think you got to be honest with yourself, but it's okay to acknowledge the things that make you too. So, like I said, it's okay to be your own fan. Don't be your own God, but be your own fan. And don't be complete either. But, I mean, I've had to learn to talk to myself in a way that doesn't add to the adversity. And I think I learned that early. I think I was exposed to it. My mom was an educator, and she worked with special education, and it was really cool to watch her and my dad love on the special education, Sunday school, and all that other stuff. And so I think I picked that up. I was fortunate I played for really hard coaches that loved us a lot, which meant they were hard on us when they needed to be hard on us, but they also loved us whole again once they broke us down. So I think I just was exposed to it. And
that's a great point too. in regards to the importance of parenting is to demonstrate, not just talk the talk, but demonstrate, where you learn that aspect of empathy from your mom and your dad.
Sometimes people listen to what you say, they always listen to what you do.
Exactly.
So you're always modeling something, and you have to be mindful of that as a leader. Like, what are you modeling for your kids when you come home from work? What are you modeling for someone who's watching you that you don't even know?
Aspects, get a little bit of brevity here. Did you guys have call signs? I mean,
yeah. So this is your next episode. So mine was Silverback, because
it is what it is.
Physical similarities, not. There's an incident, I threw some trees, whatever, and my guys, I was like, why are you calling me Silverback? And they showed me a picture, and I'm just sitting on this log, and I look like that. And I was like, all right, that's fair. So I mean, you could have worse. And it sounds cool till you know the origin story of it, because I know the origin story of it is not very complimentary, but so Silverback was my call sign.
That's awesome. No, that isn't awesome. I mean, you live it today.
I mean, I've embraced it for sure. I think some of it was inevitable.
That was just a humorous sidebar story. We had interviewed Charles Haley. His episode is going to be coming up here, or we'll have already played by the time we play this. And it was always listening to he and Nate Newton in the locker room go back and forth. And
that had to be amazing.
Charles would be giving Nate, calling him Silverback Gorilla all the time.
That had to be amazing.
Fill out all the time. But
that's one of the things I do miss about the locker room is the humor. The humor in the locker room. I always say, like, you miss the circus. You don't miss the circus, but you miss the clowns. Like the community we have in both the locker room and the ready room, the fraternity, the sorority that you have with organized team sports. I mean, it's another learning environment, right?
For over 50 years, JT Clothiers has been a respected family-owned clothing store for men and ladies in Denton, Texas. Whether you're looking for the perfect suit, an elegant top, or unique accessories, JT's offers a personalized shopping experience. The staff not only remembers your name, but also takes the time to understand your style, ensuring you always walk out with something you love. JT Clothiers carries world-class brands from around the globe, bringing you the best in fashion from far and wide. Whether you're shopping for work, play, or something in between, they got you covered. Conveniently located on the corner of Oak and Elm in historic downtown Denton, JT Clothiers is a must-visit destination. Stop by, support local, and let them know you came from Forces of Character podcast to receive 10% off your first purchase. Head over to JT Clothiers today, where timeless style meets personalized service. Well, this may be a good time to kind of get into that aspect of the camaraderie piece. Yeah. I know your passion for veterans. Yeah. And you're being around that men need that. Men need to be a part of that tribe. You need to be a part of something greater than self. You need to be a part of that
group.
Whether
it's veterans or not, what I've learned about veterans and athletes is we know we need it. All men need it. All people need camaraderie and community and accountability and championing all these other things. Veterans need it acutely because we've just recently lost it, stopped having it, right? Athletes as well. I mean, we just need it. We become the best version of ourselves when we're surrounded by others, and so trying to replicate that in a way and re-engineer that into people's lives and shared suffering. I mean, that was kind of the story that carried the load is shared suffering and using good pain to push out bad pain but yeah, that's something I'm really passionate about because I need it. I need it as much as I offer it to anybody else. My wife always says there's an aspect to that aspect of serving, give out of your need. Yeah. That you serve in the place where you need that. Well, I think it's a hack that God programmed into us because you can't think about yourself and someone else at the same time. Yeah. It's a ones and zeros, right? So I tell people the best pain medicine in the world is thinking about others. Like in Hell Week, that's one of the ways you make it through Hell Week is you're just like, all right, who's more cold and miserable than me? And you're like, there's 100 guys that are more cold and miserable than me. And then you're like, meh. And then they're laughing at you 5 minutes later, then you're done in 5 days. But that's how you make it. You make it by thinking about someone else. I mean, it is the most powerful and consistent painkiller on the planet is helping others through theirs. And then letting them help you through yours whenever that happens. I've had to grow into that. Right? Yeah, I was just going to ask you that. That's not something that comes natural, I think, to men in particular, because we, particularly as the alpha male, it's always us giving. Yeah, and to I've had to come to grips. My bride has helped me with so much in so many different ways, and she kind of challenged me one time because I did need help, and I did need to visit with some guys and just have some camaraderie. And she goes, how upset would you be if one of your closest friends didn't let you help him when he needed you? And she's like, that's what you're doing to them. You're denying them the satisfaction that you enjoy when you get to help people. And I was like, woman, stop making sense. Like, it's like stop.
You're right
stop,
again.
Dadgummit, once again. And but yeah, I mean, it is that is replicating that because we need it, right? And what makes it hard from a veteran and athlete, and for me, veterans and athletes are the same kind of animal. Like you've been both, I've been both to a lesser degree. They're just lions and tigers, both apex predators, both kind of their community. And what I found often is lions have a hard time listening to other lions because of our insecurities and our competitive nature, but we're curious about tigers. So like with David Abor, you know, the relationship he and I have, like, and I would try to do that really intentionally. If I don't have to compete with you, I can be curious about you. And so I see that all the time, you know, SEALs don't want to listen to other SEALs unless you're like the SEAL, right? But if an NFL guy walks in Major League Baseball, someone else who's elite in their craft, like I'm curious about a shark, I'm curious about a tiger. But that's what community allows you to do is grab like our facility downtown, you've been to it, I call it, it's an apex predator watering hole for broken mighty men and rich young rulers. All of us on the other side of what we thought God was. And now we're figuring out who he is and why he is and what he thinks about us in this kind of place. So for me, it's a way to kind of purposefully gather great men and women and watch them start living life with each other.
That's awesome.
Sharing their different skills and experiences.
You know, and again, you alluded to that you grew into this leadership style, you grew into this stuff. I've always been curious. Air Force is a little different branch of military service, whereas, you know, it's the officers typically go and execute, fly the missions, and it's not the enlisted. But when you went into your first SEAL Team 5, your first active unit, where, you know, you're the officer, how did you connect and interrelate with those senior enlisted guys who are the ones that have all the experience in the world that you got to learn from, but yet you're on the hierarchical path above them? So how did you relate and earn their respect?
It's more about accountability than leadership. Like in our community, it's an enlisted-led and senior-led community, right? So your job is almost to be an enabler and a resource. People are like, how do you lead SEALs? I'm like, you don't lead SEAls, you aim them. Like ridgeline, left or right limits, resources, go. And you make them repeat left and right limits because they're like, you didn't say don't steal a truck. I'm like, didn't know I didn't have to say don't steal a truck, but repeat them to me now, right? But so really, you're not necessarily leading as much as you're resourcing, contributing when and as you can, and taking notes and earning the right to lead. But you do have accountability. Like I'm the one that signs for stuff. So I'm an ensign and I'm signing for the sniper rifle that the snipers use, and I'm not shooting it, but I'm in the supply chain of his excellence, right? And so for me, I kind of tell this, it's a longer story than we have time for, but I had this moment where I was just really struggling. I was really having a hard time because everybody I loved in certain SEAL teams was going and doing great things, and I'm back here. And I had this opportunity to visit with some young guys that I kind of mentored there in Afghanistan for the first time, and so I got to visit with all of them. And I was struggling with being here instead of over there. And then one of them at the end of the conversation goes, "Hey, sir, we're going to go to 5 different places to do amazing things." And I had this, I was like, well, at my peak, I couldn't be in 5 different places at the same time. Like this optimized recall that we have that's not super accurate when we really slow down and think about it. And all of a sudden I felt like, man, you know, I poured into these 5 guys, not exclusively, but because I did my part in their world, they're now going to do great things. And Amy got right next to me because it was a phone call from Afghanistan, and those are either going to be great or really bad. And she goes, "You okay?" And I kind of shared that story with her. And I said, "Why am I so mellow right now?" She goes, "That's because you're an archer now, you're not just an arrow." Well, I said, "What does that mean?" She goes, "An arrow makes a difference wherever they hit. An archer makes a difference wherever they aim. If you want to make a difference, it's better to be an archer than to be an arrow." And that's the moment I fell in love with ascending. I mean, I've always been a guy who goes. And so when you're a guy who goes and you don't go anymore, you got all these identity issues and you question your relevance. But then you realize that sending is a multiple. I mean, and I think we hit seasons in our lives where there's a difference between influence and impact. And when you can know, hey, you know, as an aviator, it's beautiful to be a squadron commander, but also kind of sucks because you're sending guys to do what you used to do, and you better learn to love that. And I think that's the arc of a man and the arc of a woman, is to fall in love with sending and not having to go as much, and still being able to get it on when it's your turn to go. Like, for sure, man, if I got to go, I can get it on. But I love sending And I learned that in the community. You know, as an officer in special operations, your job is to identify, grow, build, and resource the most lethal warfighters on the planet, then send them and try to keep up.
Influence. I like that. Influence and impact.
Yeah.
What was your ultimate motivation? When did you know it was time to leave the active duty? Get to talk to that process.
So you know, in the special operations community, it's like one, Amy had our first child while I was over, right? So I came home to an 8-month-old daughter and a tired bride, and I'd done 3 deployments. As an officer in the SEAL teams, you really only have, most time you only get 2 chances to go forward with a warfighting element, platoon. I was fortunate, I got to do it 3 times, right? And the analogy I use is being an enlisted guy is like being in the NFL. As long as you can go, there's always a spot for you. Being an officer, it's like being in college. You got 5 years to go, 4 years to play. There's an operational horizon for officers, right? And it kind of hit that point where they're like, hey, give us your gun and here's a laptop. And I'm like, man, I don't type real well. Like, this is gonna, like, there's
I got these sausage fingers.
These big old meat sticks here. But also, I was looking around at guys who were just better than me at what needed to happen next, right? And I'm proud of myself and I'm capable, but he's my best friend, and I don't want to embarrass him because his name here is a legendary center in our community. And I was like, man, the best thing I do for the SEAL team is get out of his way and watch him become what he's going to become. We have other guys. And so for me, the machine's built to replace you. And I kind of had this thing like, hey, who could lead my element? And there's 5 guys off the top of my head who could lead this element, right? And then I go, who could lead my family? Well, no one can lead my family. So what map do I belong on? And for me, just a quick preamble, like one of the questions I get asked all the time, and as an aviator, you get asked your version of this, right? But I get asked, hey, what's your favorite gun? And I love the question because I get to pivot off it. And I go, are you asking what my favorite gun is or what my favorite weapon is? And the younger they are, the faster they go with the same thing. And the older they are, the more diverse they are, there's men and women, they'll kind of nod their head knowingly, even if they don't know what I'm about to say. And I go, listen, a gun is a tool. A weapon is what I use to win. So my favorite weapon is a map. Because once I have a map, I have it all. I know what guns to bring, what to leave, where the bag will be, how to get there, how to get home, right? And if we have a map, the worst we'll ever be is wrong, but we won't be lost. And, I think that I describe my life biographically as I've lived on the ball field, the battlefield, the boardroom, and the breakfast table. The ball field and the battlefield are maps you and I enjoyed. We've been at the high ground on those things. We love those things. But the ball field and the battlefield have some advantages when it comes to clarity and return on effort, right? Like as football players, every 7 seconds, we can self-assess our value to our teammates and against the adversary. Then we come to the sidelines and our position coach tells us, we go to halftime, coordinator tells us in the game outcome, like it's like flying nap of the earth, right? The boardroom and the battlefield's the same way, but the boardroom, I'd never done anything where it took more than a month to figure out if what I did was right. And so it's very easy to feel lost. And lost is what I don't think anybody should be. And like, I don't like being wrong, but I'll take wrong over being lost. And sometimes I'm wrong just early. And so for me, those maps are kind of how I've learned to kind of drive my life. And so for me, there's a point on the maps, like the map you looked at and the map I looked at were different maps of the same place. Because what strata are you at? Like you had a strategic map, you had an aviation map. So my season of life is I'm at a strategic map now. And so my job is to send and be able to go if needed, but to make an impact. And I think learning that has been, and embracing that has been helpful.
Now you mentioned from the ball field, the battlefield, the boardroom, the breakfast table.
Yeah.
You've made a couple transitions in life.
Yeah.
And it's difficult for guys regarding from an identity perspective.
Yeah.
What you do does not define who you are, right?
Yeah.
So what advice or how did you learn vicariously through your own efforts?
I love that question.
That aspect of how to successfully make that transition.
Yeah. I have this question. I have this conversation with athletes and operators all the time. Aviators don't ask me as often because my hair, I don't have good hair, and
the press flights.
I don't know math, and but one
football
of the things, hurt. Gun good, and I go, listen, and it took me a while to figure this, but a lion's always a lion. Regardless of what map it's on, it's always a lion. We don't become something else. And so when you think of yourself as a lion, then you got to step back and go, okay, what makes a lion? Well, a lion hunts. Okay, so what made life kind of rewarding as a football player is I hunted the running back or the guy with the ball, right? On a battlefield, hunting the bad guy. And so in theory, all I got to figure out is what I hunt on the boardroom, and I can feel like a lion again, right? Because the reality is they're going to be pouring on the ball for the battlefield where I couldn't hunt the running back the way I wanted to, or didn't want to as much anymore. Or on the battlefield, I couldn't hunt the bad guy the way I used to. And if you keep doing it past that, it's a disservice to the mission and the men and the thing that you loved once, right? And so inevitably there's this transition, this boardroom map. So I remember sitting down and thinking about it. I was like, okay, what do I hunt? And I was like, and I started to fall in love with it. And I go, hey, I hunt the reasons that people have fear about their lives, about their ability to perform, about their ability to excel. And as I started even talking to myself, it's like that scene in Chronicles of Narnia when Aslan's teeth and claws and mane grew back. I could feel myself waking back up, because what made me a lion on the ball from the battlefield is I knew exactly what I hunted and who I hunted with. And so for me to feel like a lion again, it was just a matter of figuring out what to hunt and who to hunt it with. And once I did that, it wasn't exactly similar. It wasn't as visceral. It wasn't, the feedback's still not fast, but man, knowing you're still a carnivore when you thought you were a carnivore your whole life it was cool. It was cool to kind of come back alive again. And that's what I tell guys, hey, whatever you were on those other maps, you're still that. You just got to hunt different stuff. Now here's the real cool thing to add to it. It'll never be out of season. And I'll never be too old, and I'll only get better at help hunting the reasons people have fear in their lives about their safety and security or their ability to perform. Like, there's no limitations on me now. I can hunt as aggressively and boldly and intensely as I ever could on these other things without the limitations that the ball field and the battlefield map imposed on us. So in some ways, it's better.
You caught the entrepreneurial bug.
Yeah.
You've done many businesses from Trident, other things. Kind of just briefly, just kind of share what businesses that you've been engaged in and kind of what you do.
Yeah, and again, I'll use the maps to kind of explain that. So for me, one of the things I love doing is mining the ball from the battlefield for those value propositions we can bring to the boardroom that allow us to meet and be around the kind of leaders we want to be around and learn from. Because the way you get to the high ground is always the same. You find all the right people at the right places, and you become your version of what you love about them. On the ball field, the battlefield, there's an ecosystem and an infrastructure that's built to do that. In the boardroom, you have to do it yourself. So for me, entrepreneurism became a capture strategy. Like I watched this CEO go like, man, he leads his company well, and boy, he loves his wife and his kids well. So what do I know how to do right now that he needs so I can earn the right to ask the dumb question or the question that makes me feel dumb? It's Proverbs 22:29. Proverbs 22:29. See a man excels working on speak for small men, speak for kings. And so as we leave the ball from the battlefield, we have a variety of hard skills, soft skills, and experiences that add value in the boardroom to the kind of people we want to be around and learn from. And so for me, that's all business has ever been. Business is in the really elite levels of football where you were, you can have a 14-year career if you're the best third down right side rusher. Like there's a level of specialization and uniqueness and nicheness that lets you stay in the league for a long time. And I tell veterans and athletes all the time, it's like, hey, you have a set of hard skills, soft skills, and experiences that are of immediate value to the leaders in the business world you want to be around and learn from. And oh, by the way, the only real difference between the ball field, the battlefield, and the boardroom is the hard skills. The soft skills are virtually the same. And so inevitably what happens in all of our companies, so TRG, I always say protect, perform, compete, and recover. Those are the hard skills that you leave the ball from the battlefield, uniquely credible and capable of supporting people with. TRG is protect, global security, intelligence, rescue, training, right? Hold fast is leadership and team development, and windage is sports and human performance. But you have credibility as you come with those. But for me, if I've done my job, as you snap into one of these companies, or all three of them based on your gifts, abilities, and experiences and interest, if I've done my job in 21 months or less, I'll lose you. And I'll lose you to one of my clients to do something you didn't know you could do. Like that's the thing is, hey, I call it the Baskin-Robbins day. Like how do I put you in a position where you have the stress of good choices? You know, you've got this CEO, this company. I mean, the building right next to it. Guy came work for me. He was one of the guys out of Sniper Cell on the SEAL teams, and met a great leader over at Annapolis named Derek Boyd. And you know, Derek Boyd knows his craft well enough to know that Kyle has a place, and now he's doing that, right? And so my job is to be a little bit of a lily pad that guys and gals can land on using what they already know how to do to meet someone they didn't know who knows more about what they can do than they do.
You know, I've experienced, you know, over at your facility, and there is, it's a safe place.
Yeah.
I mean, and you intentionally gather veterans, you know, broken individuals sometimes that are having a difficulty making the transition that
And
you and I
athletes,
have both
it's the
had
same
a couple
guy.
times, and athletes.
Yeah.
You know, but how do you intentionally go about creating that environment, that culture, to them? And then, I mean, it's actually, Clint, it's the sign of a great leader is knowing that you're not training that individual, you're training them for greatness to be the best, you know, their best self, and not to hold on to them because they're a revenue stream for you, but to be able to let them go.
One, I'm advantaged because if my standard employees are veterans and athletes, I've got an inexhaustible queue of that. There are going to be guys and gals that are leaving the military and transitioning out of their sport for as far as we have a military and elite athletics, right? So, but another part of it is like, that's what loving and caring, like, so the Baskin Robbins days, I always say, like, you know, you go into Baskin Robbins, there's 31 good choices. I don't like sherbet, so there's 24. I want 24 good choices. And that's the conversation I want you to have at the breakfast table. Is you go, hey, which of these 3 great career opportunities that we never knew we'd have do we choose, right? Like, I want you to have those choices, right? And what happens, like, CEOs are very, very smart men and women, and they're amazing kind of talent sifters, and I see it happen all the time. Like, we'll have a CEO and their spouse come in and just learn how to protect themselves, their family, and the house, and I'll watch them looking at the coach, who's a Marine, who's really smart, going, I bet this dude could crush it in commercial real estate, right? And then I'll be kind of sitting in the back. I was like, hey man, I asked him the other day what industries he's interested in. He's getting his degree at University of Texas, Dallas, and he's interested, would you take him to coffee and just tell him about commercial real estate? And that's when I know it's going to kind of start. And then, I mean, the first time that was with Rob Holmes at JP Morgan Chase. Now he's at Texas Capital Bank, and he was working with one of my favorite people on the planet, a guy named Josh Lewis. Josh is a decorated Marine, legendary Marine, fought in Fallujah, and Josh came to work with me, and Josh is brilliant, and he didn't know he was brilliant, but he's brilliant because you can't be a great fighter and not be a great thinker. And so I asked Rob to take him to lunch, and so he kept training him, but then they would have these lunches, and Rob was like, hey, I don't want to mess with your business, but Chase Bank would like to hire Josh Lewis. I'm like, I know. That's what I thought was going to happen all along. So use what you already know how to do to figure out what to do next for someone who knows more about what you want to do than you do. I mean, it's the same thing we did in sports. You know, hey, I thought I wanted to play this, but it seems my gifts and abilities are better at this. And that's a coach that is telling me stuff about myself that I believe, and he knows. And the battlefield's just, the boardroom's just another map, right? And the analogy I give for veterans is industry is terrain, companies are weapon systems and platforms, leadership is just teammates.
Yeah. You know, I don't think I mean, there's not a division or difference, segmentation, whatnot, between your for-profit stuff and kind of your philanthropic efforts. Because we had David Rabor on a couple weeks ago, and great guy, but you know, Dave talked about you and the impact that you had with Travis Mills, getting them together, training at your facility.
That was a neat moment. That was pretty neat.
But giving back, and then also for people that are listening in too, you and another Naval Academy grad, football player, Stephen Holly, started Carry the Load.
Started Carry the Load. And I
mean, you've done a lot in both areas, but the crossover is, I mean, I think you're a true servant leader where you truly wanting the best for others.
That's humbling. For me, they're just like, they're weapon systems, right? Like, you know, fighting evil, fighting the reason guys check out on themselves. And so for me, philanthropy is a left hook, you know, for-profit's a right hook. They're just different weapon systems, right? So I'll fight you with anything. That's why I love Dan Campbell. Like, I'll bite a dude's kneecap in a heartbeat. Like, I'm going to fight you with every tool at my disposal. And for me, business and philanthropy are just tools.
You know, I'm just very curious as to, you know, what that motivation is. Are you intentional in the fact that it's just tactical, that's what I'm called to do? Or from a strategic standpoint, do you look at this as I'm impacting culture? I see a bigger picture behind this to impact lives, because I ultimately see from a legacy standpoint, the relationships I'm creating are in perpetuity now.
For me, it's less than either or and more an and. I mean, it's like, you know, I have a great sense of urgency to steward time and talent well. Like I feel like we're entrusted with time and some talents, and what we do with those things is a form of stewardship. And so for me, I think you and I both buried friends we love sooner than we should. And I tell people, look, the worst thing you could ever do is waste time those you love and miss no longer have. So you got to use your time. And so for me, all of this is stewardship. It's an accounting for the time that God allows me, and it's a way to be a multiple, right? You know, the 10 talent thing. And I mean, I'd love to claim an overarching, like, brilliant strategy to it, but it's really just a use the day, try to make it make sense, try to make it better every day, try to make it last, try to make it bigger than you. It's all the things about ball field taught us, man. I mean, the ball field, that's when I'll forever be grateful for football, because football was the first real truth teller in my life besides my parents. That's what I love about the weight room. The weights tell you the truth. And the more talented you are, the more you have to surround yourself with people that will tell you the truth.
You can't fake it.
No,
I mean, you get exposed.
The world will tell a talented man anything he wants to hear. So you have to surround yourself with people that will tell you the truth.
Yeah. You know, and it reminds me of this force of character. I define that as someone who lives to be their best self every day. You know, they encourage others to do the same, and the organizations or associations that they're affiliated with encourage it to rise to a higher noble purpose or cause.
Well, giving yourself a high five looks dumb.
Yeah.
Like, there's just no way to look cool giving yourself a high five. So, you know, put yourself in an environment where you're giving a lot of people a high five every day, right?
Yeah, and again, as we talked about earlier, serving out of your need. Serving out of your need. But that's, you've made, you know, a tremendous amount of impact. You made several transitions in life. You're continuing to do what you do. I kind of want to give you the last word here. What would you say to that individual making that transition, or that young man coming up, in regards to, you know, from an identity perspective, who they are, you know, the self-talk? How would you encourage them to keep on keeping on?
Well, here's what I tell you. If you don't have a map, you're not on a mission. You're on E&E. If you don't have a map, you're not on a mission, so you got to have a map, right? And so for me, what makes something a map is 5 things. 4 borders and an X that you think is right. And the borders and the boundaries are more important than the X, right? Because X's change over time, they evolve. I've always said there's no X there's no X on a map you get to this side of glory where everything's great. There's no house, spouse, car, job. There's X's on a map worth going to and people worth going with, and you bounce around towards Jesus till you meet him. But the borders are the line between the always and the nevers. And what I tell guys and gals that are leaving the military, leaving sports, is like, hey, 2/3 of what it takes to get to the high ground on any map you're talking about are the same regardless of map you're talking about. There's no difference between a 15,000 foot peak in South America and North America. It always takes these things. And so you're 2/3 of the way there. If you've been on the high ground on the ball field, if you've been on the high ground on the battlefield, you've got 2/3 of what it takes. And what you got to do is just get out of your own way and replicate that formula. How did you get to the high ground on the ball field? You found and followed the right people to the right places. Became your version of what you love about them. You listen to people who know more about the map than you do, and you apply those skills. Same thing on the battlefield. So logic would tell you it's the same. And my encouragement to people is like, the biggest thing is just don't be lost. Don't be lost. And if you got a map, you're not lost. The worst you are is wrong. And that's why I tell men about the Bible. Like, if you want to go from lost being wrong, you just pick up that Bible and read it like it was a map home. That's all it is. It's a map made by your Creator leading you back home to Him. And you won't be lost. You might be wrong, but the Bible's full of wrong people. And sometimes you're not even wrong, you're just early. Without the map, you don't even know that. So get a map, find it, make it. Just don't be lost.
Good stuff. Good stuff. Well, brother, I appreciate you coming on.
No, thanks for this. I love this.
This has been a great
I appreciate
topic.
it. I don't like taking pictures next year, like, you know, he's all beautiful and his family's beautiful, and like I've got these beautiful friends. Like Stephen Hawley's Christmas card looks like a J. Crew ad, and my Christmas card looks like a wanted poster. Like,
Well, that's
4 women last seen, large ugly bearded man, right? So
that's why I
this
said
is great. I love this.
the
Thank
president
you.
of the Knuckle Draggers Club.
That's it, 100%.
That's it, 100%.
Unlimited terms.
Appreciate you, brother. Till
you,
next
man.
time. And if you guys like this, I just encourage you to follow us on social media. Go to my website, chadhennings.com, to learn more about what we're trying to do here. But above all else, I want to encourage you to be that force of character. Go out to pursue excellence. And as Clint just said today, figure out what your map is and where those boundaries are at. Until next time, take care.